Today I'm going to talk about Adolf Hitler. Most of you probably know him as a murderer, a criminal, but he was also a person like everybody else. And as a person, he actually was the victim of many different things, like parental abuse, negative influence from the culture, genetic defects, and lastly, numerous mental disorders. Of course, we cannot justify his actions in World War II by those things, but they can help us to understand the most infamous person in modern history, why he did what he did. So what's the difficulty of the psychoanalysis of Adolf Hitler? US government analyzed him during World War II, and the reenactment of the study showed its difficulty.
We all know this isn't going to be easy. All we're going to get is a mass of raw material that's been gathered from innumerable sources. None of it's going to be firsthand, and none of it's going to be obtained under the controlled conditions of personal psychoanalysis. We can't put Hitler on the couch. Furthermore, it's almost a foregone conclusion that a lot of the information we're going to dig up is going to prove to be untrustworthy and irrelevant. It's a challenge. But we've got no alternative.
As you can see, the lack of primary sources is the biggest issue, and in Hitler's case, this is even worse, since Hitler put up a facade between him and German people for political reasons. Even his speeches and his books are not reliable at all. But in contrast to this lack of primary sources, however, was the abundance of secondary sources. And there have been extensive study on mental status of Hitler according to all those secondary sources. And as a result, he's been suspected of having many mental disorders, including histrionic, paranoid, antisocial, narcissistic, and sadistic personality disorder, hysteria, schizophrenia, post-traumatic stress disorder, bipolar disorder, and autism spectrum disorder. Some scholars even made a new disorder called the dangerous leader disorder and put his best friend, Stalin, into this category with him. Therefore, it's really hard for us to know what disorder Hitler had. Even though we cannot diagnose Hitler with a mental disorder with any certainty, the story we pieced together so far seems to suggest that he has two mental disorders. The paranoid schizophrenia, which is based on DSM-4 text revision published in 2000, and narcissistic personality disorder, based on DSM-5. However, it is important for us to remember that Hitler did possess a lot of symptoms for many other mental disorders. And it just happens that he fits these two disorders the best. So now we have to look at his family history to understand why he was so messed up. Hitler's father was an Austrian custom officer. He had 3 wives and 8 children. His first wife was 13 years older than him, and his third wife was 23 years younger. During his first marriage, his second wife gave birth to a child. After the death of his first wife, he married his second wife, and he gave birth to another child within 2 months of their wedding. His second wife died a year later, and he married again. Interestingly, his third wife gave birth to a child within 5 months of their wedding. So, it is evident that he had extramarital sex with 2 of his wives, and as a Catholic, this was even more scandalous. Furthermore, there is evidence that Hitler's father was actually abusive and alcoholic. he got so drunk that young Hitler had to go to the bar to retrieve him. And this really shamed the young Hitler. And we can be sure that Hitler didn't get a good role model from his father. His mother was the third wife of his father, and she was the foster daughter and the servant before their marriage. I wondered whether she found her sugar daddy or not. But anyway, she had 6 children with him, and she probably spoiled Hitler since she actually lost 2 children before Hitler's birth. Hitler evidently also had a close relationship with his mother. And their family doctor explains their relationship in the interview.
Contrary, I was the Hitler family doctor. I got to know them all very well when I was treating his mother for breast cancer. I gave her an injection every day.
What was Hitler like with his mother?
Well, I have to say that the relationship between a mother and son, their reciprocal adoration was unusual.
How did this manifest itself?
When I summoned Hitler and his 2 sisters, who were married, they didn't live at home, when I summoned them to my office to tell them their mother was gravely ill with no hope of recovery, his reaction to this news was touching. His long, sallow face was contorted, tears flowed from his eyes. The girls, on the other hand, received the news with calm, reserve. Only then did I realize the magnitude of the relationship that existed between mother and son.
When his mother finally died of breast cancer, Dr. Bloch was amazed at Hitler's reaction.
In the practice of my profession, it is, of course, quite natural that I should have witnessed many scenes such as this one. Yet none has left me with quite the same impression. In all my career, I have never seen anyone so prostrate with grief as Adolf Hitler.
As you can see, Hitler probably didn't get a good guidance from his mother either. Now let's talk about Hitler. It's hard to imagine that this cute kid would become a killer someday. He was born on April 20, 1889, and he moved to Linz against his will for secondary school in 1900s. He moved to Vienna in 1907 to pursue his dream for artist, and he applied for the Academy of Art twice and was both rejected. He was so poor that he had to sell all his paintings just to survive. And in 1917 he moved to Munich and joined the German army in 1914 when World War I started. Now this picture was the Munich in 1914, as many people was volunteering for the war. Hitler, as you can see in this picture, was just a very normal volunteer among many volunteers. After Hitler got into the military, he served in German army from 1914 until 1918. He was brave as a soldier. He was wounded twice, decorated twice for his bravery, and got an Iron Cross First Class, which was very unusual at his level. He was also temporarily blinded in 1918 and sent to hospital. In the hospital, he received the news that Germany agreed to stop fighting. He was shocked by this defeat, and he claimed he received the divine revelation that he would one day become the leader of Germany at this time. After he got out of the hospital, he participated in the post-war politics. His movement was very bold. In 1923, he attempted to overthrow the government with a mob of only hundreds, and he failed. This was called the Beer Hall Putsch. He was sentenced to 5 years of prison and was released early. After he gained freedom again, he became more and more popular. Eventually, in 1934, he became dictator of Germany by popular sovereignty. And you can see here, Hitler actually had a hard life. He was abused as a child, unsuccessful as an artist, and seen as a traitor after Beer Hall Putsch. He didn't rise to power until his 40s. Now, knowing Hitler's background, let's look at his mental disorders. We will talk about schizophrenia first. Schizophrenia is a thought disorder, and basically people with this disorder will have trouble distinguishing between the dream and the reality. And this is why they usually have delusions and disorganized speech. According to DSM-4-TR, patients need to have 2 of the 5 symptoms to be diagnosed. And Hitler had delusions and affective flattening. Let's look at them more closely. Hitler had several delusions. Delusion is basically believing in something that is not true. First, Hitler believed that he was sent from God, as he said in one of the speeches during the Battle of Moscow in 1941. Since January 1933, when Providence entrusted me with the leadership of the German Reich, I had an aim before my eyes which was essentially incorporated in the program of our National Socialist Party. I have never been disloyal to this aim and have never abandoned my program. He also believed he was a great artist. He applied to Academy of Art twice, and he was very surprised when he got rejected. He even believed he was a great artist after he became the leader of Nazi Germany. Furthermore, he believed that people was always betraying him. In his last days, he kept saying, "All the failures in the East are due to treachery." Even before he committed suicide, he claimed, "The time has come. My generals have betrayed me. My soldiers don't want to go on." And on my tombstone, they ought to put the words, "He was the victim of his generals." Lastly, he had firm belief that his Reich will last for 1,000 years, when in fact it lasts less than 15. Hitler also had affective flattening, which is basically the lack of expression of emotions. The only time Hitler showed any emotions was when he was angry. So in this picture, if you add the time when Hitler was angry, you will get this.
Sofort aufhängen! Haben Sie noch Zweifel an meinem Befehl? Ich glaube, ich habe mich klar genug ausgedrückt. War ein Befehl! Der Angriff Steiners war ein Befehl! Hat er das gemacht? Aber dafür müsste man ihn an die Wand stellen! Dieser Morphinist hat die Korruption in unserem Staat möglich gemacht. Fremder, unberechenbarer Künstler. All die anderen, ja.
Okay, I think you are probably tired of this. So, he didn't show any emotions but his anger. However, when he showed his anger, he was so dramatic. This may show a lot more mental disorders than schizophrenia. Aside from diagnostic symptoms, Hitler also showed many classical symptoms of schizophrenia. For example, people with schizophrenia are usually genetically disposed, and they are then triggered by some stressor in their lives. It is possible that the stressor for Hitler was when he was in hospital in 1918. As he claimed, he saw divine revelation at that time, which may mean that his schizophrenia started at that time. However, since Hitler's autobiography was written for political purpose, the reliability of it should be put into question. And even if he really saw some revelation from God, so to speak, we cannot rule out the possibility that it may be just caused by the medicine. As a result, the only thing that we can claim here is that the divine revelation seems to fit into the puzzle of schizophrenia the best. The second schizophrenic symptom he had was social dysfunction. He couldn't have a normal relationship with another person, and there was evidence that his niece, who committed suicide in 1931, was having a non-mutual sexual relationship with Hitler. And Hitler didn't get married until the last day before his suicide in 1945. He also possessed those symptoms consistently for more than 6 months, which make him qualify for the schizophrenia. And the reason that paranoid schizophrenia fits him the best is because the DSM states that paranoid schizophrenia don't have disorganized speech and can usually function independently better than other types of schizophrenia. Furthermore, the delusions of this type generally will center around one theme, and this fits Hitler's delusions perfectly. However, many people disagree with this diagnosis because Hitler seems to be too organized for a schizophrenic. Schizophrenia is a thought disorder. Patients usually have trouble distinguishing between the reality and the dream apart, and they will have low social function for this reason. However, Hitler seems to be too intelligent and organized. First of all, he was a great public speaker and a master of emotional manipulation. He knew how to use the hatred in German people after 1919 to gain popularity. He became the dictator of Germany not through the authoritarian, but through popular election. It's hard to imagine that somebody with schizophrenia can accomplish that. Furthermore, Hitler's speech was very organized and consistent. He said what he believed, and he did what he said. He said he hated Jews, and he prosecuted them. He believed that Germany's destiny was the East, and he attacked the Soviet Union for that precise reason. And in general population, the rate of occurrence for schizophrenia is around 1%. For those who have schizophrenia, around half are paranoid type. The causes of schizophrenia are currently unknown, but they are probably a mixture of nature and nurture. We know that genes contribute to the schizophrenia, but scientists fail to find a single gene that can cause the disorder. They suspect it's an interaction between different genes. Schizophrenic patients also show brain abnormalities, and prenatal infection and birth complication will also cause schizophrenia. Socioeconomic status can be a very important factor for schizophrenia because patients usually are triggered by a stressor, and if they are in well-to-do families and have less stress, the schizophrenia may never develop in their life. Schizophrenia requires lifelong treatment. Patients with severe symptoms may be hospitalized, and antipsychotic drugs are used to subdue the symptoms, and they do this mostly by control the dopamine level in the brain. However, some patients refuse to take the medicine because of their bad side effects. Psychotherapy are also used to help patients, and sadly, there's no cure for schizophrenia. Now let's look at another disorder Hitler may possess, narcissistic personality disorder. Sometimes the line between narcissism and self-confidence may be very blurry. And the way to look at it is the self-confidence is based on reality and your actual capability. But narcissism is believing that you are more capable than you really are. Basically, it's a failure of self-assessment. According to DSM-5, patients need to have 5 of the 9 symptoms to be diagnosed. Hitler, amazingly, showed all of the 9 symptoms. And let's look at them one by one. First of all, he has a grandiose sense of self-importance. He believed that he would be the only person to restore the German Empire, and this would be seen from his quote, "I must say in all modesty, lest my own person, irreplaceable, neither a military nor a civilian personality could take my place. Attempts on my life may be repeated, and the fate of the Reich will depend on me alone. I shall act accordingly." The second symptom he possesses is the preoccupation of fantasies. When he was young, Hitler dreamed of being an artist, and when he got older, he dreamed of being a leader of Nazi Germany, or Germany at that time, and later he dreamed of making Germany the greatest country in the world. Hitler also believed that he knew better than anyone else. He often asked his generals to follow his military orders. And if he didn't do that, the war might not be ended by 1945. Hitler also requires excess admiration. And that's why all his close associates admires him religiously. For example, Joseph Goebbels and his wife almost break down when they heard Hitler was going to commit suicide.
Der Führer will, dass ich Berlin verlasse. Hat mir den Befehl dazu gegeben. Ich habe noch nie einem Befehl des Führers zuwidergehandelt. Nie. Aber diesen Befehl werde ich nicht befolgen. Ich bleibe an der Seite des Führers.
Mein Führer, ich flehe Sie an, verlassen Sie Berlin. Mein Führer, bitte, verlassen Sie uns nicht. Was soll denn aus uns werden?
Now, needless to say, Hitler still committed suicide after all the love they showed. After the death of Hitler, they believed that Germany was hopeless, and they murdered their 6 children and committed suicide. That was the level of admiration Hitler needed. Hitler also had a sense of entitlement, and he expected people around him to follow his need. Even at the end of World War II, Hitler expected his general to not retreat, and anybody who didn't follow his order will be shot. Now, Hitler is also exploitative, and this can be seen through his relationship with his lover Eva Braun. Hitler has known her for 15 years before his death, and during that time, he's got plenty of chances to marry her, but he chose to marry her at the last day before his suicide. Now, she might actually marry him voluntarily, but Hitler is also exploitative just for the fact that he permitted her to die because of his failure. And we all know that Hitler had no empathy for Jewish people, but do you know that he also lacked empathy for Germans and his comrades? This conversation will show you his attitude towards German civilians in Berlin during the last days of the war.
Heute den Fall Clausewitz ausgegeben. Berlin wird Frontstadt. Sie übernehmen als Kampfkommandant die Sicherung des Regierungsviertels.
Mein Führer, wenn es in Berlin zur Schlacht kommt, wir werden kämpfen bis zum letzten Mann. Aber es sind noch über 3 Millionen Zivilisten in der Stadt. Die müssen evakuiert werden.
Ich verstehe Ihre Bedenken, Monke. Aber wir müssen auch da eiskalt sein. Wir können jetzt keine Rücksicht auf sogenannte Zivilisten nehmen.
Mein Führer, bei allem gebotenen Respekt gestatten Sie die Frage, was soll aus den Frauen und Kindern werden, den Tausenden von Verletzten und den Alten?
In einem Krieg wie diesen gibt es keine Zivilisten.
He was also merciless even to his brother-in-law. He was going to execute him for some trivial reasons, and even his wife couldn't stop him.
Bitte, du kannst den Hermann doch nicht umbringen lassen.
Es besteht überhaupt kein Zweifel, er wollte fliehen.
Aber was bedeutet das schon noch? Es ist ja eh alles vorbei. Denk doch an meine arme Schwester. Sie ist vom Hermann schwanger.
Er hat mit Himmler kollaboriert, er ist ein Verräter. Mit Verrätern gibt es kein Mitleid. Mit Verrätern gibt es kein Erbarmen. Er wird vor ein Standgericht gestellt und erschossen.
Aber wem nutzt das denn jetzt noch?
Es ist mein Wille!
Du bist der Führer.
And yes, there was almost no empathy in him. Hitler was always envious of others. He couldn't stand to see people who were smarter than him. He was envious of people who did better than him because he cannot stand it. After he became the leader, he made most capable people to fight on the front line and let the dumb people sit at his command center. And lastly, Hitler was, to say at least, arrogant. He believed that he was an artist, and he held this belief even though it's evident that he wasn't capable of doing that. He didn't expect any different opinions, and if he had a little respect for those, the history might be changed. Other symptom Hitler had for narcissistic personality disorder was his extremely practical assessment of people. As he said on his comrades, I knew he's a scoundrel, but I shall hold on to him as long as he can be used of me. He's also hypersensitive to criticism, and just watch how he reacted when someone refuted him.
Mit belogen sogar die SS! Die gesamte Generalität ist nichts weiter als ein Haufen niederträchtiger, treuloser Feiglinge!
Mein Führer, ich kann nicht zulassen, dass die Soldaten, die für Sie verbringen...
Nicht als Feiglinge! Verräter, Versager!
Mein Führer, was Sie da sagen, ist ungeheuerlich.
Die Generalität ist das Geschmeiß des deutschen Volkes! Sie ist ohne Ehre!
For his preoccupation with outward appearance, just watch what he said to his bodyguard before he committed suicide.
Gut zu wünschen. Ich werde mir nicht anders als Fräulein Brauna, meine Frau, selbst das Leben nehmen. Ich möchte aber nicht, dass meine Leiche von den Russen in einem Panoptikum ausgestellt wird. Ich darf dem Russen weder tot noch lebendig in die Hände fallen. Ich will sofort danach verbrannt werden und für immer unentdeckt sein.
You can see that he's more concerned at how people would treat his body than the fact that he failed. The narcissistic personality disorder is believed to be around 2 to 16% in general population. However, they only make up less than 1% in clinical population. And this is mainly because people with this disorder generally believe they do not need any treatment. The causes of this disorder is believed to be largely in the culture and the environment. The individualism may feed the narcissism. The popular culture can also contribute to it. The upbringing is also an important factor. Just like the Narcissus in Greek mythology, there wasn't much treatment for this disorder either. The treatment is mostly psychotherapy, and some psychiatrists tried to use medicines, but no effective drugs have been found. There's no good treatment for this disorder, mainly because, by definition, people with this disorder think that they are the best in the world and therefore don't need any treatment. Hitler didn't have a psychologist, so we don't really know what treatment Hitler seek for his mental disorders. However, we do know Hitler used a lot of psychoactive drugs, including methamphetamine, barbiturates, amphetamine, opiates, and cocaine. Now, this might actually be his attempt to cope with his mental disorders. So even though Hitler had victimized so many people, he himself was also a victim. And that's my works cited page. Thanks for listening.